chance there's like an extra cord somewhere. Yeah, just a charger. Like for it's one of these annoying new iPad. I can use my phone. And I'm kind of just.
Oh, it's chilly in here now. That chiller working, I can feel it. It's always a good thing. Oh, she didn't do that.
Or I can make it. What if I make it?
Pack. Oh, how was your week?
Not right now, but we can do it after. Okay, I got you.
It was a fun bike ride. Do you have a good time?
Yeah, that was nice.
That was neat.
I can chat with a couple people and not have to worry about cars with the escort that we had.
Oh yeah, I'm glad the police showed up.
You guys charge
For what? What kind of charging cable?
Thanks. The weird fact.
Yeah, I have a new cable. You want to hear? Let me see if this works.
That would be great.
I don't have the lightning cables anymore.
Yeah, Tristan might.
Yeah, I always have
come to
extras.
rescue here.
I'm all out of. We don't do lightning anymore. We've moved beyond it.
Okay, cool.
I wasn't happy with it. There's this. What about the charging block here?
Yeah, I think he's got it.
Oh yeah. You have a new? Yeah. Oh, we have the old version. Well, if you need this. Here, plug that into there.
All right, is everybody here from the administration that's here for finance today? So, okay, good. Works for me. All righty. Let's see. We're here for the June 17th Finance Committee meeting. Members are present. I'm going to first move to approve the minutes of April 15th, 2024. All right. Thank you for that. Any discussion? No. So all in favor? Aye. All right. That passes. Okay, so we're here on Resolution 2023-65A. We're talking about the CDBG monies, I'm presuming. Or
Yes,
something to do with that.
CDBG and ESG,
ESG.
Emergency Solutions Grant. Yes.
All right, and I'm assuming, Mr. Wyman, you have some sort of,
I have some brief remarks and would
walk
have,
us through this,
what, sorry?
to walk us through this in some way.
No problem.
You go ahead, you have the
Okay,
floor.
thank you. So as council knows, Lakewood Citizens Advisory Committee, or CAC, convenes 4 times each year during August and September to evaluate funding proposals submitted by city departments and not-for-profit partner agencies. They also hear application presentations, peer presentations from each applicant, and then ultimately provide council with recommendations regarding the distribution of CDBG and ESG resources in the coming year. Council Resolution 2023-65, adopted on December 18th, 2023, authorizes mayoral submission of Lakewood's 2024 HUD Annual Action Plan and includes the CAC's 2024 CDBG and ESG allocation recommendations. Because Lakewood's Annual Action Plan cannot be submitted to HUD until Lakewood's actual FY24 funding awards are announced by HUD, and the city must adopt budget legislation prior to the end of the current fiscal year, the CAC's recommendations are based on estimated 2024 CDBG funding in the amount of $1.85 million and estimated 2024 ESG funding in the amount of $165,000. HUD announced Lakewood's actual $1.901 or $1,901,823 2024 CDBG allocation and the city's $165,353 ESG award on May 8th, 2024. Therefore, Resolution 2023-65 must be amended to include the city's actual 2024 CDBG and ESG funding levels. To minimize duplication of effort, HUD requires the city to develop contingency provisions language, which are included in your packet, describing the city's approach to aligning estimated allocations with actual funding levels once they are known. These guidelines, approved by the CAC on September 6, 2023, have been utilized to distribute the $51,823 in CDBG funds received over the city's $1.85 million estimate, and the $353 in ESG funds received over the city's $165,000 estimate. And this is depicted in Exhibit A1 to Resolution 2023-65A. At this time, I would be happy to answer any questions council members have regarding these remarks and this legislation.
All right, any questions? This is pretty much right. As we do every year, we make a prediction of how much money
Correct.
we're going to get, and then we go to our CAC and they allocate it or make a recommendation. To
Make a
allocate it.
recommendation based on that estimate.
Based on the estimate,
Yeah,
yeah.
and we found out when we find out the actual number, which this year is closer to the estimates, thankfully on the high end of the estimates, closer than ever before, particularly ESG, which is within $353. We use those contingency provisions, which you have in front of you, as the tool to allocate the funds received over estimate.
Okay, great. Yes, Mr. Bullock.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Dan Wyman. I also agree, it looks fine. Just while we have you, curious about your ability to make projections. It seems pretty on the nose this year. And maybe you could just review with us the timelines, because they're always confusing, because we're, I think, talking about getting funding squared up for the existing or the previous year. We're about to work on the coming year. So if you can just recap all that with us. And then the other point is that the larger proposed allocation is to give the lion's share of the CDBG side to the Department of Planning and Development, 44,000 out of the 51,000. I think that's that's explained in the one-pager summary, but can you recap that for us? The thing there, I think, is that the Planning Department can use discretion.
Yes. So first of all, Congress, the White House are currently and have been for quite some time in negotiations regarding HUD's 2025 biennial budget for the next 2 years. There seemed to be some agreement in the relatively recent past that they had come to a consensus about decreasing HUD funding, not substantially, but below what it had been it's been about $3.8 billion for the nation over the past several years, with the exception, obviously, of the pandemic, when things kind of everything was off the table. So that is an unknown right now, but because early indications were that the funding would be reduced overall, and because I think there are actually, the number of entitlement communities has slightly increased, so there's a smaller pie and more pieces of that pie. I anticipate estimating probably a $1.8 million 2025 allocation and probably $165,000 ESG allocation for 2025. It's always good to be very conservative so that we don't have to, use those contingency provisions on a number that's below our estimate. So the way the contingency provisions work are the first order of business is to take the $51,823 and take 15% of that and distribute it proportionally based on the proportion of each of the 7 public services allocations that the CAC approved. So that's how that portion of the funding was distributed. That is part of that is one of the provisions. The balance that went in this case to planning administration, to the Department of Planning and Development to administer the program, the balance went to that line item because we were very conservative in our $225,000 allocation to that line item in the original estimate, and given the fact that we were partially based on the fact that we were a bit understaffed, we're getting back to full staffing, and so based on that, the balance is going to planning administration because it's needed there to fully staff staff up the department.
Okay, thank you. So you expect that you're going to need that money internally. You could, if some need came up or arose, also choose to allocate it to some other purpose. But right now, as we understand, we think we need to cover staff time.
Yes.
Okay.
And if that were not to be the case, we would go back to the CAC and ask them to approve a different
Okay.
purpose.
Okay. And then we're about to tee up the coming summer for fiscal year 2025, right?
Those meetings have been scheduled
Okay.
for the final 2 Wednesdays in August and the first 2 Wednesdays in September.
Very good. All right. Thank you for the annual check-in.
Yep, you're welcome.
All right, with that, I will move to recommend for adoption, whatever the stuff we were talking about. 2023-65A for approval by full council.
Second.
All right, any further discussion on this? Nope, all those in favor? Aye. All right, and so it's going to be recommended for approval, and I call this meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have quorum, right? We're just missing Tom and Mark's renter car. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and come to order for committee of the whole. And I'll move to approve the minutes of the May 20th committee of the whole meeting.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. And that motion passes. Then I'll move to approve the minutes of the joint meeting of the Committee of the Whole and Charter Review Commission.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. And that motion passes. Okay, so we are on to our one order of business for tonight. Besides minutes, is Resolution 2024-36, a resolution to appoint Angela Byington to the position of Director of Planning and Development upon her potentially taking the oath of office tonight. I say potentially, but traditionally, we certainly respect the mayor's ability to appoint the folks that she needs in her cabinet, and we just like to get to know you a little bit. So that's what tonight is for. And I'll kick it off first. Any opening remarks from any council members? All right, and then Ms. Byington, if you wanna just tell us a little bit about yourself, maybe a little bit of how you started in this field and kind of what brought you here. Sure. If you just, yeah, there you go.
Should I repeat that? Thank you. Thank you for considering my appointment and for allowing me the time to get you to know me and to hear what some of your initiatives may be. I come to Lakewood with over 25 years of experience in public planning and development. I am originally from Milan, Ohio, which is between basically Sandusky and Norwalk. I currently reside with my family in Henrietta Township, which is near Amherst. I started my career with the city of Sandusky. During my first couple years there, I received my master's in urban planning and development and design from Cleveland State. Before that, I received 2 undergraduate degrees from Eastern Michigan University, one in urban and regional planning and one in psychology. So I was lucky enough when I started with Sandusky that they urged me, not that I wasn't going to, but they helped support me going back to get my master's. So I was with Sandusky for approximately 7 years. When I was there, I was responsible for the Planning Commission, the Board of Zoning Appeals, all the zoning permitting, parking committee, design review, all of the normal committees that cities usually have. I conducted small neighborhood planning initiatives, and I applied for and secured numerous grants. During that time, Clean Ohio was a big, that had just kind of come online, and I was lucky enough to get a Clean Ohio grant, which ultimately translated into the redevelopment of a dilapidated and vacant warehouse on the waterfront into what is now the Chesapeake Lofts. So I'm not sure if you've visited Sandusky, but that was one of the main first grants that I received. So it's really nice downtown Sandusky if you haven't been there recently. I also applied for the first grant towards the Sandusky Bay Pathway, which is a waterfront pathway that not only connects residents and visitors to the waterfront, but also to the downtown. I believe 3 miles are currently constructed with a plan of 12 going from Bayview to Huron. When I was in Sandusky, there was a residency requirement to be a director, and at that time I lived in Milan and was unable to move up the chain to be a director. I became aware of a position with the city of Elyria. It was their planning director position, so I applied and accepted a position as the planning director. Within about 1.5 years, the planning department and community development departments combined, so I took a new role as the community development director. While I was in Elyria, I really got my feet wet in regard to federal funding. I was in charge of CDBG, well, our department was, and I managed CDBG and home, NSP funds, CDBGR, so really became familiar with all of the nuances and regulations tied to any programs or projects that are funded federally. I also managed the CRA and enterprise zone programs when I was in Elyria. Worked on long-range planning efforts, numerous nights with neighborhood groups going through the new, then new community vision comprehensive plan for the city of Elyria. I was with Elyria for 8 years and thought I would probably just stay there. I really enjoyed the city of Elyria. However, the city of Sandusky reached out to me, and I really liked the direction that Sandusky was going at that time. They had recently hired a new city manager, Eric Wupser, so I decided to go back to Sandusky, and you know, I'm happy that I made that move. There was a lot of good things that was happening and still happening in the city of Sandusky. So I came in as the planning director there, and I was in charge of the planning division, the transit, the Sandusky transit system, neighborhood planning, CDBG, and then in concert with the chief development officer, economic development projects. So one of the big projects that I worked on there was the revisioning of the central waterfront. So it was very heavy public process, took probably at least 18 months, but what we did was through a lot of meetings with the community and input, put together a plan and then ultimately constructed the repurposing of the Jackson Street Pier, which is next to the Chesapeake Lofts. And historically, it's a large pier that was used strictly for parking, and the ferry came in there, and so everybody would park there. The residents loved the pier. A lot of people would go there over lunch and take their breaks. So there was a long process with getting the community on board with repurposing it and losing parking. So ultimately, that plan was approved, and it was bid out, and it was constructed. And so now there's still some parking there, what's needed for the ferries, but there's a large green space for events, concerts. They built a large pavilion, which is used for numerous things. And then there's a large boardwalk all the way around the pier. So I think that now the community loves it. It was just a process, but it worked out for everybody. And at the same time, the other project that was going on was the Shoreline Drive reconstruction project. So Shoreline Drive is the drive that's right up next to the water, next to the pier, runs east-west. It's a small street. It used to have a railroad under it, so lots of issues with it. But the buildings that faced Shoreline Drive, that were facing the water, was all the back of the buildings. So part of that plan was to make the back of the buildings the fronts. So when people were coming in from the water, that's what they're seeing, is more so a front door as opposed to the back door. We also narrowed the road to make it more pedestrian friendly, expanded the sidewalks, you know, a process with everything as far as, you know, community input, and there's a lot of hurdles and, you know, things that you have to work through. But at the end of the day, it's very walkable now, and there's much more pedestrian traffic on it, and I think it's very well used. And I do think the community is happy that project also came to fruition. So although I loved being in Sandusky, I had a family issue that happened, and I had to look after my family a little bit more. So I was looking for a job that allowed me a little more flexibility. So I took the position with Perkins Township, which is adjacent to the city of Sandusky, in their community development. Well, I'm the community development director is what my last position was. And there I was in charge of the planning, economic development, the building department was under me, code enforcement was under me. So, you know, I would have been there 4 years. I'm not a job jumper. I enjoy where I'm at, and I'm all in when I'm in. So the biggest project that I had when I was working there, and the most recent, is the Line Data Center project, and this is more on the economic development side. So there was a former GM factory that was on Perkins Avenue, 127 acres, had been vacated for about 10 years, and it was just an eyesore to the community. Numerous times, different grants were applied for, and the property just wasn't moving. So Align Data Centers, we can't take all the credit, they contacted us, and they said, would Perkins and the school district be receptive to considering a TIF for our development? So that's when I started working with the school board, and Perkins and the school board have a good relationship, and they are development or pro-development as long as it makes sense. So ultimately, that TIF was approved, and the school board was on board. I think it was a unanimous vote. So that resulted in 127 acres. They're just getting their building permits now, but the acquisition price was $52 million for the property. First phase committed $250 million. 3 more phases per the development agreement should be occurring. And we worked out a deal where 20% of the, it was 100% for 30 years, 20% going back to the township and the schools in service payments annually. So it could be a controversial project in some ways, but at the end of the day, everybody's getting money that they would not have gotten if it were not for the development coming in. So I, was happy in Perkins, but it really wasn't an urban environment, and I really miss working in an urban environment. So when I heard about the Lakewood position, I was excited. I thought, well, this is what I've been doing for 25 years, and I thought, well, Lakewood is a great place. It's so vibrant. I love that you guys you're very unique. You're progressive in your development, but yet you're conscious of the historic elements, and work hard to kind of compromise when needed to make the development work. I also see your devotion for diversity and mixed, affordable market rate housing. So I was very excited to see the position, and I applied, and I'm really excited that I'm to this point. And if I am appointed tonight, I look forward to working with the council, mayor, administration, and all the co-workers I would have in Lakewood.
Thank you so much.
Welcome.
There's a lot of great experience, and I can certainly see a lot of parallels with things that we have going on here in Lakewood, so I'm excited to have your expertise in those areas. Council members, Vice President Schechner.
Thank you, and thank you, Ms. Bennington. How do you pronounce your name? I'm sorry.
Byington.
Byington. All right. Thank you. I've been spending a lot of time in Sandusky since 2011 when I met my wife. So I have seen it transform over the past 13 years, especially the Jackson Street Pier, those apartments you're talking about. One thing that is, and I have to say, it's night and day between what it was a decade ago, being down there. But my question is, so there's a pretty, I think, successful DORA down in the downtown area, and I've seen the city take advantage of that through certain events that they have down there with the State Theater. They have their Witches Walk. Bike Week, of course, we're not going to have a Bike Week here. I don't see that happening. But, and I know there's different types of DORAs. Some could be temporary or for small periods of time or event-based. Do you have any thoughts on how a DORA would work in a city like this where you do have residential right on top of commercial retail?
Thank you through the chair. So in Sandusky, it was controversial to start with. The police department was nervous about what would happen. For the most part, I believe it's gone pretty smoothly. I think that in Lakewood, as in Sandusky, but more so Lakewood, you have to have a very defined area to keep it manageable. I think that if you have, you can overlay your own time limits on it. So, if the concern is that it would be too loud for residents that are above those areas. That's something that my understanding is that you could do. I will tell you the Village of Milan has one as well, and that's what they do. They also don't, in Milan, they don't allow you to utilize Dora during the festivals. And in Sandusky during Bike Week, I'm a little fuzzy on this because I haven't been there while they're doing this, but they do somehow amend it, I think, the area as well during their Bike Week. So I think that it can be a good tool, and I think that a lot of your businesses would likely support it very much, so it could help them. Again, I think it's just something that the council would have to look at, the area that it would work and what additional limitations you might want to put on it.
I know every time my mother-in-law comes up here, she's like, why isn't there a Dora up here? Why isn't there a Dora? And I'll just say, speaking of Milan, I remember the first time I was down in Sandusky and I see Milan Road, and I'm like, oh, Milan Road. I was like, no, it's not. It's Milan. It's like, well, you guys pronounce everything wrong down here. But it's the way it is. That's my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Other council members? Councilman Rader.
Thank you, Madam President, Madam Chair. And thank you for being here and agreeing to apply and for choosing Lakewood. First off, we need your level of experience, I think, in this role. And you have big shoes to fill with Director Leininger living, but I think you're absolutely up for the task, just based on your conversation and here and your great resume. One question I did have, you kind of alluded to this, we have an active transportation plan we passed not too long ago. We also have a sustainability plan. They're going to call for a lot of improvements, maybe not too dissimilar from some of the stuff you've done in other places, but it'll require a lot of citizen buy-in, right? A lot of community buy-in, particularly when you're changing folks' streets. We're going through that now with bunts. I'm sure you're already getting up to speed on all of that. I guess what's your strategy for going into those community conversations, and when is a good time to start, I guess, having those conversations when we're approaching these big projects?
Well, the earlier the better. I mean, it takes some time to educate and to maybe change the perception of what different elements of active transportation are and how they're going to impact, the stakeholders and the properties that might be adjacent to the projects that the city might want to undertake. So I would say, as far as timing, the sooner the better. Even if it's not a project that's going to be funded in the next year, I mean, why not start the conversation? I'm not up to date on your active transportation plan, so I can't really speak to it in detail, but I'm looking forward to digging in and working with the council and community on that, any projects. So, you're welcome.
Colleagues? Other council members? Okay. All right. Councilman Baker.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Ms. Byington. Looking forward to working with you. It's an impressive resume, and I think it's hard to find peer communities to Lakewood in this region. But in some ways, I think you worked in two, right? I think Sandusky's a peer community. We obviously don't have Cedar Point. That's the big distinction. A little bit bigger than Sandusky. But Elyria, county seat, I think that's where the Justice Center is, when I was county seat. But it's has lots of, it's a historic downtown, but challenges with this investment and, trying to do the best they can. So as I look at it, I think, what your experience, what I'm most excited about is getting those federal funds that kind of have transformative public investment that then spurs private development and private investment. And one thing I was, curious about, if you worked on, and if not, kind of like how you see it maybe applicable here, is Sandusky recently got, I think 2 years ago or a year ago, so it might have been after you left, but you're probably familiar with it, a RAISE grant for Route 6, where they're basically taking, I think it's essentially Clifton Boulevard, but extended all the way out to Sandusky, and putting in roundabouts and kind of like pedestrian improvements, shared use paths, those types of things. And I think why RAISE was so excited about it is it kind of showed the ability on a long stretch, right, to kind of put that thing down and then show the investment off of it. So is that, as you come into Lakewood, kind of knowing the community, you applied for the job, obviously excited about it. I'm excited to have you here. We're excited to have you here. But kind of what opportunities do you see in our community, just kind of first blush, that you think, I think there's a hole in the ground you know, a little bit south of here, but.
Yes, that
are
is
lo-
one.
Yeah. So just kind of go through what you might see as opportunities for us for state, federal funding, you know, to kind of have a transformative effect on the community.
Well, I'll start with the RAISE grant with the Route 6 project. I think why that was so successful is because it was not just a City of Sandusky project. The county was involved, the City of Huron, Perkins Township was, there was letters of support, numerous communities putting financial funds towards the project. So I think that's important, is whenever you're applying for funds, they're looking more regionally, so if you can have partnerships with other communities, I think that's a bonus. As far as specific projects for Lakewood, I don't know that without looking through some of your documents, I don't know what you have planned already. I do know a little bit about the Bunce project and kind of between your question and the question regarding active transportation and how do you work with the community. You know, I'm anxious to help out with that project, but I'd have to see what else you have online. You know, I know you have, you know, large transportation arterials, and I know you're looking to do bike paths and different forms of active transportation. So I can look for funding for that. And again, I think it's most important that you're partnering with whoever you can partner with on projects. I don't know if you probably have a good relationship with the county, so that's good. And then as far as the project that you were referring to, and I don't want to call it the
Redevelopment
I don't wanna call
along,
it
Bell and Detroit, yeah.
Yes, of the old hospital site. You know, I've kind of been watching that from afar on television to start with, so I've, you know, getting a little more information on it since I've started day one, but, you know, I think that that's going to be a great project. We just need to push it past the finish line and make sure that the development itself is, you know, meets the needs of the whole community and doesn't, you know, negatively impact the neighbors. So I think there's a way to do that, and you know, hopefully I can help push that past the finish line. So I'm sorry I didn't answer your question specifically. I don't have specific projects that I can say today I think would be good and that I could look for federal funding, but it's something that I'll do. I will do that for you.
Yeah, and thank you. And then the next thing, and I know Lakewood's a little unique in the sense that we have planning and economic development kind of under the same window. It does sound like you have experience in both fields, really well credentialed, but could you explain kind of the push and the pull between economic development and planning and how you see this role?
Mm-hmm. So I've been on both sides. To start my career, I was just on planning. So one of the issues that I saw, or maybe a step that some communities have missed, is when you have planning and economic separate, the economic development staff are not communicating with planning enough. So they might see a project that comes in, think, oh, that's going to bring a lot of money, that's going to bring jobs. They don't care what it's zoned, what the master plan's going to be, the impact on the community. They're just looking at jobs. So I think that from the planning side, you know, you're looking at all of those things. So here in Lakewood, since it's together, it's all one, you know, I think that's something that I have expertise in both, and I think that, you know, hopefully I can bring projects to line, you know, online quicker. But there is always going to be a push and pull in regard to when you want a project, you know it's good for the city, but it doesn't exactly match up with what the master plan is, or there might be some pushback from the residents. So again, I think you know, what we need to do is to try to make the developments occur, but then be very conscious of how it will affect the neighbors. So again, big on early communication and reaching out and educating the public during the projects.
Thank you. I look forward to working with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Me too.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Ms. Byington, nice to meet you. Thanks for joining us, and glad to hear of all your experience. I think the planning director position is the Swiss Army knife of creative initiatives in this city government, and it's a pretty active city government in a very active community. So there's a lot of communication that historically has happened between council members and the planning department in general. You know, and it's partly the nature of community input and people who run for office is very few of us are thinking of the mechanics of some internal procedures in public works or the building code, but we all routinely are getting feedback on the parks, the pools, what the Main Street looks like, what the store mix is, what about this new idea, what about that new idea, why are there so many parking spots, why aren't there enough parking spots? And so, you know, we expect ourselves, speaking for me, I expect myself to be part of those, the community leadership that thinks through these decisions, and then that invariably is going to come through to the planning department, sometimes other departments too, but all that's a long way to say that the expectations are high, the traffic's high, it's not a small position. So how's that sound?
It sounds great. I look forward to the challenge, and you know, I've always worked closely with, Sandusky was a city commission, and Larry was a council, so I've always worked closely with councils, and you know, my door's always open, and I look forward to working with Mayor George and the administration as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. I was very impressive resume, and thank you for sharing so much with us tonight. I just wondered if what drew you into this field in the first place? Like, what attracted you to this field?
Thank you. I used to like to draw cities, and so I don't know. It was just something that I really like to do. I will tell you, when I first started college, though, I was actually pre-med and very far along in it, and then I made the switch But looking back, I think the reason was because I used to draw cities all the time. I was obsessed with it. And I like process. I like a process. I don't want to say I like regulations, but I just like those kind of, you know, things. And I like to see an end to my, you know, if there's a goal, I like to go after it and be able to meet it. So it just seemed like a good fit for me. So I took a couple classes, and then I'm like, yes, this is what I want to do.
I mean, I can see a correlation. That's both helping people and things.
Well,
You know, right? You know. And then another question. You mentioned a lot of some pretty impressive projects, and some of the same things. I can see connections with things that we have going on here in terms of there's always, as Vice President Schackner always says, like when you build when you have a city that people want to come to, there's going to be a shortage of parking because they want to be here. So that's always kind of that push and pull. But is there a time that you've been working on a project and like the community feedback, you thought, okay, we really need to go back to the drawing board about this, or we have to make some pretty big changes, not just like, oh, we'll paint it red instead of blue or whatever, but like a significant change. Have you ever had that experience?
So, thank you. I have, and I'll go back, but I do think it takes time, and changes will happen. So when I was in Sandusky, one of the things that we had looked at was reducing some parking on Columbus Ave, which is the main strip going right down the center of Sandusky. We talked about putting in parking meters. There was a large discussion on it. Lots of public pushback, lots of pushback from the businesses. So that, you know, at that time, we stepped back and we took a pause. And my understanding, since I have left, is they are now moving forward with 2 blocks on Columbus Ave. I believe I'm not sure if they're still putting in the boulevard, but they're widening the sidewalks, and they will be losing parking. But I think, you know, they decided to step back and take the pause, and when the time was right, then they came back with the project again. I still think that they are, there's some scrutiny over it publicly, but I guess my answer is I've seen that happen, but I do think that sometimes if it is the right thing, that it might not be the right time, and it will be right later. That's not to say that every single project is right.
Appreciate that. You know, we
You're welcome.
talk a lot about, you know, a lot of it is about communication and sort of change management, and, you know, just adjusting to a new idea may just have to find the right ears at the right time, so appreciate that, and your openness to work with both our community and council, and obviously the administration, so.
You're welcome. Thank
All
you.
right, council members, anything else? Any other questions? All right, do you have any questions for us?
Thank you. I don't at
Okay,
this time.
all right.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. I'm sure any council members will be happy to grab coffee or chat with you at any time if you have anything you need. Okay, well, I am going to move to refer Resolution 2024-36 to full council for adoption.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. And that motion passes. All right, and I think that's all we have in committee, so without objection, we are adjourned.
Knocking them out.
Just started now.
I know.
Designated outdoor freshman area. Oh, yeah. Yeah, to the person watching at home, yeah. To our viewer.
All right, we will call the June 17th meeting of City Council to order. If you're able, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Now pause for a moment of silence. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Baker,
Here.
Bullock,
Here.
Keppel,
Here.
Marks, Rader,
Here.
Shackner,
Here.
Strebig.
Here.
Reading and disposal of the minutes of the regular meeting of council held June 3rd, 2024.
Move, oh, blah, blah, blah. What am I doing? I'm moving to approve without the necessity of a reading. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
And that motion passes.
Report from Committee of the Whole regarding meeting held today, June 17th, 2024.
Colleagues, earlier tonight, the Committee of the Whole met for the purpose of interviewing Angela Byington for the position of Director of Planning and Development. We learned quite a bit about Ms. Byington's extensive experience, including 25 years working in the city of Sandusky. She has 2 bachelor's degrees and a master's in urban planning, has expertise in planning and zoning, has worked with CDBG funds and in economic development, has extensive experience getting federal and state grant funding, and working in communities that in that experience we all agreed would serve our community well. The committee voted unanimously to recommend adoption of Resolution 2024-36. Move to receive and file that oral report. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
And that motion passes.
Item 2, Resolution 2024-36, a resolution to take effect immediately approving the appointment of Angela Byington to the position of Director of Planning and Development upon her taking the oath of office.
Move to adopt. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? I'll just say once again how impressed we were with Ms. Byington's qualifications, and we're very excited to have you on board.
Madam President.
Yes, Councilman Bullock.
I'll just add the same, that we look forward to working with you. It's a big responsibility. We thank you for taking that on. It's a important moment of inflection for our community because we've got a number of very meaningful developments that are waiting to get moving again in the post-COVID timeframe. And of course, you arguably are about to join the most active community in Northeast Ohio in terms of public comment. So, and that includes the people up here. So God bless you, and we look forward to working together.
Any other discussion? All right. Hearing none, on the motion to adopt Resolution 2024-36, all those in favor say aye. Aye. And that motion passes.
Item 3. Item 3, Oath of Office of Angela Byington.
Congratulations and welcome. All right, I'll move to receive and file the oath of office. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. And that motion passes. Without objection, I'd like to move item 8 to the top. Next, all right.
Item 8, Resolution 2024-40, a resolution to honor Juneteenth Independence Day and spread awareness of Juneteenth as a federal holiday to respect the significance of June 19th, 1865, the date on which the news of the end of slavery reached the slaves in the southwestern states.
We need a substitute. Okay. And that is in Granicus, right? Okay. Okay. All right. So first, I'm going to move to amend or substitute. Amend. Right. Amend. We have a typo that 9 should be a 6 in 1865, not 1895.
Yeah, sometimes the computer, the 6 goes upside down and makes it 9. I'll second.
All right. Motion's been made and seconded. Discussion. You need to do a roll call on amendment? No. Okay. All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
And that motion passes. All right. Then I will move to adopt as amended.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Discussion. Councilman Rader.
Thank you, Madam President, and I just wanted to thank you for introducing this resolution with me. It recognizes and honors Juneteenth, which is June 19th, as honors and recognizes this date as the holiday that it is. We passed this ordinance back in 2021, and so did the Biden declared June 19th a holiday for the entire nation back then. The resolution acknowledges the historic significance of the day, which you'd mentioned, 2.5 years after the Emancipation Proclamation, when Union troops finally made it to Galveston, Texas, ending chattel slavery in the continental United States. The resolution calls for citizens to reflect on this history of slavery, encourages folks to participate in all the June 19th festivities around the region, and recognizes the contribution of African Americans and promotes anti-racism currently done in the city. This resolution really came out of a lot of conversations I've been having with citizens around the city, and I just realized there's kind of a, since 2021, this was a big holiday, and there's been sort of a lot of education around that moment. There's still a lot of education, wonderful events going on in our city about this, but we need to continue to educate folks about a part of our history that can be sometimes sore and hard to reach with people. But this holiday is an excellent moment to both celebrate the progress we've made in the last 149 years, but also point towards the work that we still need to reaffirm to commit to do. One of my favorite quotes from Martin Luther King is, "Change never rolls in on the wheels of inevitability. It's always through the continuous struggle that we get things done in this country." And I think our part here, certainly we don't struggle to pass a resolution in a great place like Lakewood, but it certainly helps to center that work and the work of the Anti-Racism Task Force and so many others that we need to reaffirm and keep moving that ball, because it's not going to move on its own. It requires us to pay attention and keep moving, because as long as we have socioeconomic and racial disparities that keep growing in this country, there's a lot of work left to be done. So thank you, Madam President.
Other discussion? Yes, Councilwoman Strebig. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you, President Keppel and Councilmember Rader, for bringing this resolution forward. I am pleased to recognize and celebrate this important federal holiday with the African American community, our neighbors, and all of the residents of Lakewood. I'm celebrating the richness that our society gains when everyone is given an opportunity to contribute. Contributions from African Americans in every aspect of our lives, in science, art, mathematics, politics, literature, athletics, and on, create a vibrant society for everyone. We must continue to seek out, lift up, and diversify all of our systems for the betterment of our collective society. Let us continue to evaluate the equity of every situation and continue to encourage our neighbors to achieve their fullest potential. Let us strive for a community that thrives when everyone is given the opportunity in consideration of their unique circumstances and where they are appreciated and rewarded accordingly. I fully support this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Other council members, discussion? I'll just add, couple things. One is I first learned of Juneteenth when I was working at the library and with some of my colleagues, and it was well celebrated in that branch, and it was not something I'd ever heard of. And so I learned about it from children's books, which is a great way to learn about things. And speaking of which, I just want to commend the Madison Court Community Coalition on their Juneteenth celebration, 4th annual, and several of us attended. It was an excellent moment for our community, seeing our community come together around this holiday. And actually, they had a bunch of children's books that they were giving away. So full circle moment for me, and I was glad to see that, and I really appreciate that work. I also want to acknowledge that we have members of our anti-racism task force here. That work also continues on, as Councilman Rader pointed out. So our thanks to all those who help make our community stronger through our diversity and continued education on the history that affects all of us as Americans. Okay, so we have a motion and a second to adopt as amended. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And that motion passes. And we'll do, we do have a ceremonial copy of the resolution. If anyone wants to come up front, we'll get a quick picture with the ceremonial resolution. And, all right, let's head on up.
Item 4, report from Finance Committee regarding meeting held today, June 17th, 2024.
Councilmember Bullock.
That's me.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Vice President Schackner, man, I'm all over the place.
It's all right. We had a meeting today focusing on Resolution 2023-65A. Essentially, every year we have the Citizens Advisory Commission picks out some where money or CDBG dollars are going to go. That, of course, is based on an estimate. Once that estimate comes in, we do have a contingency plan. If the estimate is a little off, or a little more, a little less, to reallocate the funds. Luckily this time, well, as usual, because of Mr. Dan Wyman, we were very close to the estimated amount, so very little had to be reallocated. And this resolution allows that reallocation to be submitted to HUD. So in the meeting, this was approved. This was voted to be approved by council and recommended for approval. So that's what we're recommending today. Thank you.
Second. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
And that motion passes.
Item 5, Resolution 2023-65A, a resolution to take effect immediately, amending Resolution 2023-65, adopted December 18th, 2023, authorizing the director and directing the mayor to submit the fiscal year 2024 one-year action plan of the fiscal year 20 to fiscal year 24 five-year consolidated plan, which includes dollar allocations and activities to be funded with federal CDBG and ESG resources, as well as any other entitlement funds received from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, all amendments thereto, and all understandings and assurances contained therein, and incorporates the city's application to HUD for fiscal year 24 CDBG and ESG funds.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
And that motion passes.
Item 6, Ordinance 10, 2024, an ordinance to take effect immediately to approve the editing and inclusion of certain ordinances as parts of the various component codes of the codified ordinances and to provide for the publication of such new matter.
Move to defer.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? This is just our periodic ordinance, or to update our ordinances. So, all right. All those in favor? Aye. And that motion passes.
Item 7, Ordinance 12, 2024, an ordinance to take effect immediately authorizing the transfer in advance of certain funds.
Move to defer.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
And that motion passes.
Item 9, Resolution 2024-41, a resolution recognizing the Gold Coast Waterford condominium on the occasion of its 50th anniversary.
Councilwoman Marks?
Yes. Resolution recognizing the Gold Coast Waterford condominium on the occasion of its 50th anniversary. Whereas the Waterford, located at 12500 Edgewater Drive, has been a landmark of architectural elegance and community spirit since its establishment in 1974. And whereas the Waterford was developed under the leadership of Frank P. Celeste, former mayor of Lakewood, and his team at National Housing Consultants, making a significant milestone in the development of Lakewood's Gold Coast. And whereas the construction of the Waterford was completed with meticulous attention to detail and featuring high-quality materials, including white marble, precast Portland cement, and gold and bronze glazed brick. And whereas over the past 50 years, the Waterford has provided a luxurious living space for its residents, fostering a sense of community through its well-maintained amenities, including a swimming pool, shuffleboard court, and beautiful interiors designed by Edward Hughes Fay III and Maeve Cassidy. And whereas through cooperation amongst owners, the Waterford has remained resilient by planning and preparing for the challenges of erosion and aging infrastructure and maintaining high standards of preservation. And whereas many notable Waterford residents have contributed significantly to the community, such as Dennis Feeder, who played a crucial role in the building's conversion and served as a trustee for the Lakewood Public Library for 25 years. And whereas celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Waterford offers an opportunity to honor the rich history, architectural beauty, and community contributions of this iconic living space. And now, therefore, be it resolved by the City of Lakewood, the Mayor, City Council, and all of Lakewood join with the Waterford residents, both past and present, to recognize the 50th anniversary of the building, celebrating its historical significance, architectural beauty, and community conversations. And I just want to acknowledge, and I think we all do acknowledge, the significance of the Gold Coast here in Lakewood. It's such a very important part of our community, and maintaining these buildings to the standards that we require in the city is so very important to the future of the community. So thank you very much, and I'm happy to be there to celebrate their 50th birthday.
Thank you. I will move to adopt that resolution.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Thank you for representing us at that event, Councilwoman Marks. All right, any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. And that motion passes.
Item 10, communication from Councilmembers Baker, Keppel, and Streebig regarding complete streets.
Councilmember Baker.
Thank you. Dear colleagues, on April 15th, 2024, City Council adopted Resolution 2023-73 that adopted the Active Transportation Plan and accompanying Safe Streets for All plan, which called for the adoption of complete streets policies and legislation to ensure accountability measures for implementation. The Active Transportation Plan had the following community vision statement. Lakewood envisions a complete and connected network of people walking and biking that provides year-round access to local amenities, resources, and regional bicycle and pedestrian network. Lakewood envisions a culture of respect for all roadway users and bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure that is safe and comfortable for people of all ages and people with disabilities. It is in line with the Active Transportation Plan and its bold community vision statement that we bring forward this ordinance to enact Section 901.23 Complete Streets of Lakewood Codified Ordinances to address the livability and safety needs of Lakewood by building upon the efforts to promote an equitable multimodal transportation system. The Complete Streets Ordinance sets up an accountability structure to ensure that the city is meeting the laudable goals outlined in the Active Transportation Plan. Moreover, the city and our school district are unique that we do not provide school buses to bring students to school because we have neighborhood schools where most elementary and middle school students live within walking or biking distance to their respective school. It has been proudly called a walking school district. The Active Transportation Plan provided data that the key issues impacting caregiver decisions to let a child walk or bike to school included safety of intersections and crossing at 61%, speed of traffic along route at 45%, and convenience of driving at only 13%. As such, the convenience of driving is not driving those decisions. Safety is. Moreover, 67% of fatal and serious injury pedestrian crashes and 40% of fatal or serious injury bicycle crashes happen within a quarter mile of schools, and over 83 and 90% occurred within a half mile of schools. To be blunt, we owe it to the most vulnerable among us to do all we can to implement the safety infrastructure improvements outlined in the Active Transportation Plan, the Americans with Disabilities Act Transition Plan, adopted in November of 2023, the Climate Action Plan adopted in May of 2023. Achieving the goals of these rich and complex documents will require a long-term intersectional approach designed to last beyond any one council or administration. While many communities that enact Complete Streets ordinances create a new volunteer committee or task force to oversee its implementation, the city already has a qualified body in the Planning Commission to take on that work. Section 7.2 of the Lakewood's charter creates and provides a structure to Lakewood's Planning Commission. The Planning Commission is entrusted with many responsibilities under the charter, but Section 7.2G outlines items that require mandatory approval of the Planning Commission. That section outlines that nor shall any street be opened, widened, narrowed, relocated, or vacated, or its use changed for any purpose whatsoever unless it has first been submitted to Planning Commission for report and recommendation. Considering the Planning Commission's charter-bound duty to be consultant on any changes to our public rights-of-way and the goals of the Complete Streets Ordinance, they are well-suited and pre-positioned to fill this role. Moreover, besides having the expertise to do the work, the Planning Commission also has the capacity, as they have gone from a high of 85 agenda items in 2017 to having only 37 in 2022 and 25 in 2023. The Complete Streets Ordinance seeks to have the city, before embarking on any transportation project, to come before Planning Commission and show the treatments called for in the Active Transportation Plan for each transportation project. If those treatments are not feasible, the city must explain why in a public meeting before Planning Commission. The process will increase public participation, safety, and ensure that the city meets the lofty goals outlined in the Active Transportation Plan. We understand that this proposal creates a process that is not traditionally included in the city's process for embarking on transportation projects and will require established protocols to be modified to accommodate the public input and accountability structure of the Active Transportation Plan. But we could think of no better reason than the safety of our most vulnerable users of all public rights-of-way to endeavor to make these changes. We look forward to working with the administration, our colleagues, and the public on the Complete Streets Ordinance to create a safer and more equitable Lakewood. We respectfully ask that this correspondence and the accompanying Complete Streets Ordinance be simultaneously referred to Planning Commission and the committee council deems most advisable. Thank you.
Thank you. I also just want to thank Councilman Baker for the invitation to co-sponsor this and for your hard work laying this all out here in this communication and the ordinance. All right, so first I will move to refer this communication to Planning Commission and Public Safety.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion?
Yes.
Vice President Schagner.
Thank you. I know we're doing this in communication, but not on the ordinance just yet, but I think this is the right point to do it. I think that this upcoming ordinance is most likely going to be the most consequential and transformative piece of legislation that any of us is going to work on, and at least anything that I would have been on since my time in council. This changes the active transportation plan instead of something that could be on a shelf and referenced as a guidebook to something that has accountability and be implemented, and highly democratic in a way that the public does have a say. They get to hear what the plan is when the new street there's a narrowing or widening or some work to be done, what the plan is to include aspects in the active transportation plan, and most importantly, why maybe something in the active transportation plan cannot be met, and an explanation as to why, and questioning from the public and the Planning Commission as to investigate why those cannot be met. I mean, I recall the consultant when she was here giving her presentation, and we asked, well, what's to stop this from just being a recommendation? She said, a complete streets ordinance. That's what cities have done. Now, and I think also this brings this issue that is extremely important. This is the thing we get the calls most about. It's speeding, trying to get from point A to from point B safely. People that have difficulty traversing the city, how to widen sidewalks, make certain areas safer, make new pathways. This is the calls we get. And this actually gives people another avenue to evaluate their elected officials. Because as we know, the mayor, because the Planning Commission is going to be the one that hears these and makes a decision of whether or not, if something is not put forth in a plan, if the explanation is sufficient. And that leaves voters an opportunity to consider their candidates and their platforms, because council has 2 appointments on the Planning Commission and the mayor has 3. So it's something to think about now that people have more of a say in what they want their city to look like in the future. So I think this as an ordinance is certainly the way to go. And thank you for those of you that worked on this. Thank you, Sydney. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Kyle. Put a lot of work and a lot of thought.
Thank you. Further discussion on the communication? Hearing none, on the motion to simultaneously refer to Planning Commission and Public Safety, all those in favor say aye. Aye. And that motion passes.
Item 11, Ordinance 11, 2024, an ordinance to take effect immediately to enact Section 90123, Complete Streets of the Codified Ordinances, to address the livability and safety needs of Lakewood by building upon efforts to promote an equitable multimodal transportation system.
Move to refer to Planning Commission and Public Safety.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? I believe we have a couple e-comments on the, oh, they were on the communication maybe, or on the ordinance.
Might be on.
I think there were 2. And when we do, while you're finding those, we do have some folks signed in to speak on this topic. So Daniel Zielinski, you want to come on up? And you know the drill, you've been here before. You have up to 5 minutes. Please address the chair and keep your remarks courteous. Oh, and if you can state your name and address for the record, please.
Green, got it. Daniel Zielinski, 2197 Northland. The air conditioning in here is amazing, whoever did that. So 2021, a kid down the street, he opened the door to the front of their house and the dog gets out. He chases after the dog runs in the street and gets hit by a car driving by. Killed, horrifying. Some of the parents in the street, we get together and we say, that was horrifying, we should do something about that. So his mom called the police to try to make a report, but I don't even know that they took the report, nothing really happened. The engineering, I forget, there's someone from the administration, there's the traffic calming program. They come out, they put in the radar thing. They say, yeah, people are speeding, but not enough. Your street's fine. So this ordinance provides a forum, a public open forum for a discourse about that sort of an incident. Our street right now they're going to replace the pipes, they're going to replace everything. You know, this is a great opportunity to have that conversation, but we're not having it. This ordinance gives that space. It takes it off of the grumblings on Facebook and it puts it right into the open. And it provides a clear and specific mechanism for the city to make a consideration of that input or whatever changes may or may not happen. I support it. I hope each one of you do as well. I encourage each one of you. Thank you.
Thank you. And next up is Ryan Ream. Come on up. You know the drill as well.
Hi, Ryan Ream, 1409 Marlow Avenue. People often confuse walkability and bikeability with proximity. We have many stores, services, and restaurants close at hand in Lakewood, but that doesn't make us walkable and bikeable if the infrastructure isn't safe or doesn't support active transportation. This is especially true for our younger and older neighbors. Our main commercial corridor of Detroit sandwiches cyclists between parked cars and traffic. The lack of daylighting forces cars to pull through crosswalks in order to safely see oncoming traffic. The absence of curb bump outs drastically increases the danger pedestrians face when crossing the street. We have painted bike lanes on Madison, but I see many young adults and more vulnerable groups biking on the sidewalk instead because they feel unsafe without protected bike lanes. These are just some of the few reasons why we need an ordinance like 11-2024. The active transportation plan was a great step, but it's unrealized unless we act quickly and implement it. This is the type of ordinance that will actually make Lakewood a bikeable and walkable city. We can continue grandstanding about active transportation and caring for the environment, or we can implement serious change that not only makes our streets and citizens safer, but improves our planet's health as well. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up, Ben Van Leer.
Hello, Ben Van Leer, 1469 Woodward Avenue. I just want to say that I strongly support this ordinance. I've been doing bicycle advocacy for more than 12 years in Lakewood, and I've seen a couple different bicycle master plans and talked with many, many people about how to make biking safer in Lakewood. And there have been lots of good ideas, some very good improvements for sure, since I started paying attention to this topic, important for transportation, active living, safety, everything. But all of those projects that were implemented that improved those things were done on an ad hoc basis based on either the planning department finding an opportunity or certain people raising their voice. And Lakewood, in the community survey and broadly in the community, there's been support for active transportation and for road safety for all users for a long time. So it's really good to see an ordinance that makes considering and implementing those things a requirement instead of just a nice to have or a when it's convenient application. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and then Emily Lindberg. Bless you.
Thank you. Emily Lindberg, 1651 Lauderdale Avenue. I just wanted to speak in favor of the Complete Streets Ordinance proposed today here, as it very thoroughly describes or prescribes rules of conduct for implementing the projects proposed in the newly adopted Active Transportation Plan and holds our local government accountable for doing so. One aspect of the Complete Streets Ordinance that struck me as particularly strong was that the desired outcome of the ordinance is to create equitable, balanced, and effective transportation system that prioritizes access and safety for the most vulnerable road users. And again, in Section 3, the design of capital investments and transportation projects shall prioritize the most vulnerable road users. These are significant statements because for a long time, our country has been prioritizing or has prioritized the movement and storage of private automobiles in an unequitable and unbalanced manner. This ordinance demonstrates that our leadership is living our values out loud, of being a community where people can walk and bike safely. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I think that's everyone we have signed in to speak on this topic. Not seeing, okay. We have some other folks signed in on other topics. All right, so we are on the motion to refer ordinance 11/2024 to Planning Commission and Public Safety. Any further discussion from council? All right, then, oh, yep, Councilman Baker.
Thank you, President Keppel. And I'll just say that this is the start. So, I'm hopeful for input from my colleagues. Obviously, we can't, only three of us can co-sponsor something. So interested in my colleagues in the administration's and the public's feedback on this. As Ms. Lindberg said, it's, I often think about our most vulnerable road users, my children, right? And I think about what was different when I grew up in Lakewood in the 90s, and I think distracted driving is the scariest part, and bigger cars. So what we need to do is that if we keep putting back the same infrastructure, we're not accounting for the fact that drivers are more distracted and the cars are bigger. So we need to implement more safety improvements within our roadways. So, this is the start. Excited about the process, and we need to find what's best for Lakewood. So thank you.
Thank you, and thank you again for all your work on this. Yes, Councilwoman Striebeck.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to discussing this further in the Safety Commission meeting and making sure that all the voices from our neighbors that are living their safety in front of their houses and can give us eyewitness accounts and detailed information about what could be more safe in their neighborhoods. I think this is an excellent first step, as Councilman Baker just pointed out, and I'm looking forward to exploring all the intricacies of this idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it really is an intersectional idea too. Is so we were talking about the most vulnerable users. I was thinking about work we've been doing on the ADA transition plan. We have a lot of seniors and folks who rely on public transportation and are walking that last mile home. Folks with lower income are less likely to have their own personal vehicles and they'll be walking and bus riding. So I think, this is an invitation to have this community conversation about this topic, as well as with our fellow council members and the administration and the public. So we look forward to continuing that conversation. Okay, on the motion to send to Planning Commission and Public Safety, all those in favor? Aye. And that motion passes.
Item 12, May Finance Department report submitted pursuant to Lakewood Codified Ordinances 11103.
I'll move to receive and file.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. And that motion passes.
Item 13, communication from Mayor George regarding Complete Streets Initiative resolution.
Mayor George.
Good evening, members of council and the public. I'm going to go off script a bit. You can see the letter here. I encourage you to read it, but I want to take a moment and speak briefly about the two proposed Complete Streets pieces of legislation. The good news is there seems to be an agreement between City Council, the members of the public that spoke today, and the administration on the need for this legislation. We are starting from the same foundation. The challenge becomes the implementation. How do we get from ordinance or resolution, frankly, I'm fine with ordinance, but we need to determine how we actually implement the proposed legislation. And this is where the input of the administration is absolutely crucial. Our planning department works each and every day along with our Public Works Department, our city engineer, my office, and many others to implement the dozens of projects we have going on simultaneously throughout the city. These are trained professional city staff who are experienced in implementing the complexities of our city projects. The council proposed ordinance would remove these professional decision makers and put these important decisions in the hands of the Planning Commission. Now, don't get me wrong. We have a top-notch group of individuals in the Planning Commission, led by the Chief Planning and Design Officer of the Metro Parks. I mean, who would not want to have this man involved in planning? But this will not always be the case. Previous chairs of the Planning Commission have various backgrounds and specialties, and their focus may not always be the same or like our current commission. We've had past architects, past attorneys. These are all certainly professional individuals who volunteer and give their time and energy to this very, very important role. And I'm in no way negating their work. But unlike our planning director, who, by the way, we just swore in here this evening, who went through a vetting process with City Council, and before that, a thorough vetted process with the administration, has a professional planning degree, as does our city engineer have a professional PE. As elected officials, I don't believe we should take the burden off of us for making these difficult decisions and put that work on a volunteer board that doesn't have a requirement to have a professional degree. Every election cycle, the voters have the decision at the ballot box of who to keep or remove from office. These citywide transportation decisions could be made by those who will be directly held accountable by the voters. If in 4 years the voters decide that I'm not the person to lead us down this path, then so be it. But as an elected official, it's my obligation, it's my duty to be the leader and lead by making the difficult decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll move to receive and file that communication. Motion's been made and seconded. We do have one e-comment. I don't believe we have anyone signed in to speak. Motion's been made and seconded to receive and file. Discussion, Councilman Baker.
Thank you, and I appreciate the mayor's comments, but I think there's a slight mischaracterization of the proposal, and I'm happy to work with the administration further to address it. In drafting the ordinance, I did not seek to replace or remove City Hall professionals from planning, designing, and implementing these projects. I simply created a forum by which they would explain why certain treatments called for in the active transportation plan weren't implemented. I will work further with the administration to address those concerns because the city engineer is a PE and the chair of the planning commission may not be. And so I would not seek to take over that city engineer's engineering PE stamp and place it with the planning commission. The planning commission simply provides a forum for the public to provide input. Moreover, I would argue, I think with pretty good legal background, that anytime we alter or change a public right-of-way, our charter requires, so our voters have already made that decision, that our charter requires it to go to planning commission. So those are the 2 points, but happy to work with the administration on this to make sure we can get what's right for Lakewood, so thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I think this is going to be a continued conversation, and I think I would encourage everyone to look through both the ordinance and the resolution so you can see the language side by side, and we'll, I'm sure, be having lots of conversations to pull the best parts out of all.
Madam President?
Yes, Councilman Bullock.
Thanks. Would love to join the conversation a little bit here. So first of all, I welcome the focus on active transportation, on complete streets. It's actually, I think, long overdue that we work on a complete streets ordinance. I know the city of Cleveland's had one for years, and I think many other municipalities in Ohio have done that as well. I agree with the discussion that what matters is the implementation, is the actions to back up the words. We've done some. We could do a lot more. I agree with the points that many citizens have made that we've got all this potential. There's still more good progress to achieve. And I also relate extremely well to the father who talked about a kid seeing their dog killed in the street and then trying to get the city to respond. It's not easy as a resident to get the city always to respond. That's not a criticism. That's just an observation that from a citizen's point of view, you see a common sense problem, you're trying to get a response. I think it's a challenge for all of us in the city government official side to try to get that response out there more rapidly and more effectively whenever possible. What I'd like to, I guess, invite some discussion from the administration with a little bit now and more later is, isn't the goal to implement the active transportation plan? Isn't the goal to reduce speeds, increase safety? Isn't the goal to make good on the significant investment we've been making now for 10 years in sidewalks and walking and the bike bikeway improvements so that we're getting more done. And even my colleague just mentioned the process being to explain why we're not doing something. I hope the process is here, we are implementing the plan. So am I hearing the discussion incorrectly? The goal here is to move forward with our safety goals, move forward with our placemaking and livability goals, which also, by the way, increase the value of the neighborhoods, which I think people across the region have been responding to and voting with their feet by moving to Lakewood or staying in Lakewood, right? So this is not a negative. That's a partly a rhetorical question, but also partly for a question for the mayor or any other director. We're not trying to play the game of not implementing and following through, right? Does anybody care to comment?
Thank
you.
I don't think anyone's trying to play any sort of game with the active transportation plan. I think we've produced a complete streets resolution that we feel we can implement. Again, ordinance resolution doesn't matter to me. The goal is to implement the plan and to create an ordinance or resolution in a way that we can actually do that effectively. And I think, it's going to take a lot of time and energy from all of us to work and figure out what can actually be done.
Thank you, and with your permission, Madam President. Thank you, Mayor, for that response. And, the way I've always thought about it is the challenge is the financial side. I think we do have some capital money to devote to thoughtful street design. It's always been a juggling act to meet the various needs and priorities, but increasingly the city has a consensus. It's good to hear that the administration sees it the same way. So the goal is going to be to get more streets more consistently designed and built. Really should be streetscapes, streets, sidewalks, and all the rest this way. So it sounds as if we're starting from the same policy / priority / just community common sense common ground framework that we want to do well, and we're going to work together to find a way to be more and more successful over time. So I welcome that. Thanks.
Thank you. Vice President Scheckner.
The way I read the ordinance is that the Planning Commission acts as one that oversees and provides advisory guidance to the active transportation plan policy. And then if there is an exemption request by Director of Public Works or Director of Planning Development, it shall provide the Planning Commission of that exemption request. Planning Commission can hold at least one public hearing, shall hold one public hearing where they hear that request. Members of the public have an opportunity to also speak. And they decide that to reject that exemption request, which doesn't mean a project doesn't go forward. It just means that the Planning Commission wants it adjusted in a way that it's more in line with the active transportation plan. But even if they do reject it, it goes to council 30 days, and council then can either say, no, Planning Commission, we think you went too far on this, the exemption's good. And even if council agrees with Planning Commission, heck, that's a couple layers of review that occurred, which would be the whole purpose of making this a public process. And that doesn't kill a project. It goes back to, hey, you need to design this, and that we don't find that exemption rationale valid. So I could be mistaken in my interpretation. So I'm interested at the committee hearing to hear Law's determination or explanation of why the administration believes that it takes it completely out of the hands of the professionals that work every day within the administration. As I always told people, when people are like, why aren't you doing this or that? And it's like, well, council, sometimes you have to know your role a little bit. We don't administer, we don't hire or fire. That's the administration. They're here every day, doing the job, keeping the city working. We review, we approve things, but we're not here 24 hours a day, and we don't make the final decisions majority of the time. This provides not only council, it's actually a final decision, the negative goes against the planning commission, and maybe some of the public goes to agree with the administration. But I just don't see it that it takes it out of the hands of Director of Public Works at all, or the planning department at the end of the day at all, and leaves it to a volunteer group that is appointed by us and appointed by the mayor's bed. And I mean, I think we could agree. I mean, having an attorney as the chair has never turned out well. God, oh, man. But I mean, it happens. But it's still it works. It works through. We get through it. But Lou agreed with too. Yeah. But at the end of the day, it goes back to the people. The people want an active transportation plan. The community surveys all say it needs to be included. And like Tristan said, or Councilman Rader said earlier, when talking about Juneteenth, you know, it's a much less, in the grand scheme of things, less important application of Martin Luther King's quotes. But things don't happen in a vacuum. They just don't happen. They just don't just happen. You have to push, and you have to have things to make it happen. And I think that's what this does. So I'm interested to see law's interpretation that led the administration to believe that this takes it out of the hands of our talented public works and planning department. So interested, as I always said, it's never a final product when it's up here on first reading. So leave it at that.
Councilman Rader.
Thank you. Just one quick comment. Thank you to all those that have worked on this to this point. But to Councilman Baker, through the president, if you could bring examples too. I think we're fortunate in that, like, we're not the first city to have done something like this. We'd love to see how it's worked in other places. You know, just to kind of get a sense for how things would flow. And if there's any counterpoints to where this hasn't worked in other cities for some reason, or it's been too onerous, or somehow got in the way of the process that was not productive or helpful, would like to hear that while we're kind of deliberating on this and trying to make it work best. That would be great. Thank you.
Certainly, I think there's examples of both.
Other colleagues. All right, and I'll just add, you know, as this conversation continues, I was pleased to hear the mayor say open, you know, to an ordinance. So I think there's some room here to come together around this and have continued discussion. This is a big idea, so it's not something that's going to happen overnight, and there'll be a lot of conversation. And we also want to let Director Byington settle in a little bit before we dig in too much. So I expect that will be heading into committee in these conversations soon. All right, so on the motion to receive and file the communication, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Aye, and that motion passes.
Item 14, Resolution 2024-42, a resolution to take effect immediately to support the Complete Streets Initiative and to address the livability and safety needs of Lakewood by building upon efforts to promote an equitable multimodal transportation system.
I'll move to refer to Public Safety and Planning Commission.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Discussion? I think referring both sets us up to have that continued conversation. All right, motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, say aye. Aye, and that motion passes.
Item 15, communication from Mayor George regarding mayoral appointment to the Architecture Board of Review, Board of Building Standards.
Mayor George.
Members of council, it is my pleasure to appoint Nicholas Slaughterbeck to the Architectural Board of Review. I'm grateful for Nick for his willingness to volunteer his time and energy and expertise to improve the quality of Lakewood. His commitment to shaping our shared future is invaluable, ensuring that our city remains vibrant and inclusive for all. Thank you.
Move to receive and file. Second. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Aye, and that motion passes.
Item 16, communication from Building Commissioner Parmalee regarding a modification to Lakewood Codified Ordinance 130675, structural engineer report requirement.
Commissioner Parmalee.
Thank you, Council President, members of council. I'm requesting modification of Lakewood Codified Ordinance 130675, structural engineer report requirement. As the ordinance is currently written, the report's due to the building commissioner every 3 years. I would like to have that report due every 5 years to alleviate some of the burden to the building owners. Since the ordinance was adopted in 2022, we've had many buildings undergo significant structural repairs that have to be completed within a 2 to 3 year timeline due to the cost. There's no more work to be done with these aging structures, and extending the timeline will only help us get closer to compliance. I appreciate your consideration in modifying this ordinance.
Thank you. I'll move to receive and file.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. And that motion passes.
Item 17, ordinance 13, 2024, an ordinance to take effect immediately amending section 130675, structural engineer report requirement of the Lakewood Codified Ordinances.
Move to refer to Housing Planning and Development. Second. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. And that motion passes.
Item 18, communication from Building Commissioner Parmalee regarding fee ordinance.
Commissioner Parmalee again.
Again, thank you, Council President, members of council. The building department is proposing a revision to various parts of Chapter 13, our building code that houses fees in central locations. We review our fees on an annual basis to ensure they follow industry standards, as well as staying reasonably close with our surrounding suburbs. Affordable permit fees make it easier for property owners and contractors to stay honest and pull all necessary permits to do the work in our city. Removing the fees from Chapter 13 of the code and enacting a master fee schedule allows us to take a high-level look and come to council when changes are needed as a whole, not just by a single ordinance line item. This is just one effort to move all fees out of the codified ordinances and have them combined into a master fee schedule that will establish fees citywide. I would greatly appreciate your consideration in keeping our process as streamlined as possible. Respectfully, me.
Thank you. Move to receive and file. Second. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Councilman Baker.
I just look forward to getting to this in committee, but this is, as someone who's tried to look through our code to find our fees, this is incredible. Yeah, so I think this is another example of you being cutting edge in housing and building, and appreciate it, and look forward to discussion.
Appreciate that.
Thank you. I'll echo as a librarian, I like my information tidy, so I appreciate it. So. All right. Any further discussion? All right, we're still on the motion to receive and file the communication. All those in favor? Aye. And that motion passes.
Item 19, ordinance 14, 2024, an ordinance to take effect immediately, amending and repealing various sections in Part 13 Building Code of the Codified Ordinances, removing individual fees.
Move to refer to Housing Planning and Development. Second. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. And that motion passes.
Item 20, Resolution 2024-43, a resolution to take effect immediately, establishing a master fee schedule and incorporating fees from Title III local provisions of the Lakewood Codified Ordinances.
Move to refer to Housing Planning and Development. Second. Motion's been made and seconded. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. And that motion passes.
Item 21, liquor notice, Lakewood Business Forum LLC, 17415 Northwood Avenue.
I don't believe we're in receipt of this yet, so I'll move to defer. Did we get it today?
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right. Director Vargo? I'm sorry, I didn't see it.
Oh, thank you, Madam President. It came over late. I apologize, but that's when we received it, and I sent it over early evening. And I sent one of the two, the Northwood Avenue, and the Law Department finds no statutory basis to object to that. With respect to docket item number 22, that won't need to be deferred as we don't have the report yet.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Chief.
The fault lies with me. Director Vargo does not need to apologize. That was my fault.
That's all right. Well, then in that case, you're forgiven. All right. Councilman Baker.
I see no statutory reason to object.
All right. So we'll move to file without objection.
Second.
Motion's been made and second. I'm getting the hang of this. All right. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. And that motion passes.
Item 22, liquor notice, La Mocha Cafe at 13741 Madison Avenue.
Move to defer.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye, and that motion passes. All right, we're at the end of our regular items. Public comment, I have, I'm sorry, Josh Motor? Which one do I do? Mature. Okay, should have gone with my first instinct.
Check. Yeah, you got it the first time. So thank you, Councilperson Keppel. Josh Mature, board member of Bike Lakewood and resident of 1520 Cohasset Avenue. I would like to thank all of those of you who have proposed and supported a complete streets ordinance. As a representative of Bike Lakewood, we wholeheartedly support a complete streets ordinance. This initiative is vital for ensuring the adoption of our recently passed active transportation plan and Safe Streets for All plan. This long-term vision and commitment to our city's vitality is absolutely essential to ensuring safety and accessibility for all Lakewood residents. Lakewood has inherited a walkable, bikeable infrastructure which grandfathers us into the titles of the most walkable and bikeable city in Ohio by way of our population and business density. Other cities in Ohio and nationwide are taking great leaps in their unique approaches to infrastructure that make their communities more desirable places to live. And if we speak in terms of our recent actions and initiatives, we're lagging our peers in other most walkable places, including the city of Cleveland. It is with that in mind that I feel we must act, and we must hold ourselves and our infrastructure to the highest standards possible so that this responsibility does not simply fall to the next person in our shoes. Our infrastructure must be designed with all ages and abilities in mind so that our community can live free from the fear of automobiles. And paint on the road will not protect the most vulnerable members of our community. The proposed ordinance appears to be a viable and reasonable approach to the implementation of these plans. Holding ourselves accountable in this way is necessary, and where exceptions must be made, the ordinance provides a path forward. Thank you all for your careful consideration of this extremely important legislation. I also want to thank all the members of council, the city, and officers who rode and supported us for their attendance over the weekend at our Bike with a Leader event. So thank you for everybody who attended and came and supported that. We really appreciate it. To Director Byington, welcome. We at Bike Lakewood look forward to working together to make our community the best it can be, and we're excited to have you here and to work with you.
Thank you. All right. Ryan, okay, I wasn't sure if you wanted to come up again or if it was a different topic. Come on up. Yep, come on up.
I just wanted to second what Ryan Ream, 1409 Marlowe Avenue. Just wanted to second what Josh was saying, so thank everyone for coming out, and especially the two officers who came out were super professional, really helpful, and we really appreciated them too. I forgot to get their names, but they were awesome. But Bike Lakewood will be hosting another social ride. It's June 26th. It's a Wednesday, 6:30. We're going to meet up at the same spot at Madison Park. It's going to be about an hour ride, and then we're going to end up at around 7:30 around Mallory's and get some ice cream or some snacks. So hoping to see some more friendly faces there. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and Ben Van Leer?
Ben Van Leer, 1469 Woodward. The final thank you, I hope, for the Bike with City Leaders ride on Saturday. Thank you very much to all the members of council who came and spent a beautiful Saturday afternoon with us, riding on the streets that are identified in the active transportation plan and talking with members of the public. And it was great. Thank you. Yes, and for the Lakewood Police Department officers too, they were really helpful. So if you have any suggestions for things to improve, if you would like to do this next year, or even if you just want to say we need popsicles before and after the ride, appreciate the input. Thank you.
Thank you. It was a really great event, and thoroughly enjoyed it. And I also want to give a shout out to the LPD officers. They were wonderful helping out, and also to Tricable Treats for donating said popsicles, which is great to have local business supporting this initiative. All right, is everyone signed in for public comment? Oh, we do have two public e-comments. Safety issues, one on pools and one on food trucks. So those will be included in the record. All right, announcements from colleagues. Councilman Baker.
Yeah, not to pile on, but I think it was Lieutenant Deutker and Officer Jameson that were there. It was a great event. I brought my 7-year-old, and speaking to having better street infrastructure for bikes, he loved riding on the street and tried racing Lieutenant Deutker to intersections. So it was interesting. But I know that takes a lot of effort by Bike Lakewood to set it up, and I know the police officers. I think Lieutenant Deutker got to Madison Park early in the morning, so a long day for him. So appreciate police department, appreciate Bike Lakewood. It was a great event. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, maybe we have a future bike officer. That would be a great recruitment tool. Other announcements from council members? Councilwoman Marks.
Well, I just want to thank Bike Lakewood for organizing that wonderful event. Ben Van Leer, I got out there but didn't finish, but I was so happy to be out there. So thank you. You're all so wonderfully receptive. It was such a great event. And I'm sorry I wasn't able to complete the whole ride because I can't imagine what the neighborhoods thought when they saw all those bikes going down the street. I just thought it was wonderful. And the fact that people brought their kids, you know, Ben, you had your son, Kyle had his son. I mean, it was really a wonderful community event. So keep it up. I may be on a tricycle the next time you go out, but I plan to get out there again. Thank you, and thank you for the wonderful support you gave me in your enthusiasm to tell me to just keep up. So thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Any further announcements? So we have one more announcement, which is we're beginning our council community conversations. So this is an opportunity for folks in the community. Certainly everyone's always welcome to do public comment. We always enjoy that, but this is an opportunity to just come talk with us in a more casual setting. So our first one is Ward 1, which is Thursday, June 20th from 5 to 6 p.m. at Lakewood YMCA. So Councilmember Baker and I will be there, as well as I think our at-large are swinging by. So you can come and chat with us, ask any questions, give us suggestions and ideas, and we look forward to that. And thank you to the YMCA for hosting that meeting. Okay, announcements from the administration? Anything? No? All right. Without further business, I will move to adjourn. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye, and we're adjourned.